Assalamualaikum and hi, good day everyone. Welcome to our panel discussion for LMCE 1072 Academic Literacy. My name is ADIKA ISKANDAR bin KAMARULZAMAN and I gonna be your chairman facilitating today's session. Our discussion revolve around Sustainable Development Goal 2, which is Zero Hunger. When we talk about ending hunger, the conversation usually focuses strictly on producing more food. But according to the State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World 2025 report, global hunger is such a complex food issue. It's not just a common supply issue. It is heavily driven by overlapping factors such as high food prices, poverty, inflation, conflict, and also climate shocks. So, our main question today is, does global hunger mainly caused by a shortage of food, or is it more about unequal access? To help us unpack this, we have our three panelists from group 4. So, let's start with a round of introduction and their initial positions. Zarfan, can you lead this discussion first?
Thanks Adika for the great opening. So, hi everyone. I am Muhammad Zarfan bin MAHATHIR, and my focus for today is on climate change and sustainable agriculture. From my perspective, we cannot realistically solve hunger if our global food production systems remain highly vulnerable to severe climate shocks. Drawing from the IPCC 2023 synthesis report, I argue that extreme weather events like drought, floods, and unpredictable heat wave are completely destroying crop yields and damaging livestock. This creates an unstable food supply from the very start. Therefore, achieving zero hunger requires building climate resilient farming systems and supporting poor farmers before a crisis happens, rather than just handing out aid after a disaster has already devastated a community.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Muhammad NAJMI bin JAFRI. My angle looks closely at conflict, academic shocks, and food assistance. Based on my position on the global report on food crisis 2035, I believe hunger becomes most severe when war, displacement, and massive inflation hits community simultaneously. In these emergency situations, local livelihoods are wiped out, trade transport stops completely, and market completely fail to function. While long-term agriculture plans are great, we absolutely need immediate, immediate emergency food assistance and stronger social protection systems to save life when people lose their income and cannot safely access food anymore.
Okay, thank you, Adib. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Aiman ZIKRI bin ZAMRI, and my focus is on food affordability and access to nutritious diet. Looking at the SOFI 2025 report, my core claim is that hunger isn't a production problem, it's an affordability problem. Even if the world produces an abundance of food, it means absolutely nothing if a family does not have the financial means to buy it. When food price inflation rises faster than household income, low-income families are forced to reduce their meal quality, whether it be skip meals entirely or rely on cheaper, low nutrition food just to fill their stomachs, which actually completes the actual goal of healthy nutrition.
Thank you to all of our panelists for setting up those incredible perspective. So let's dive a little deeper into the core data and evidence from all of your sources. ZHARFAN, let's start with you. So your evidence shows that climate change heavily damaged production. If climate shocks drastically reduce harvest, what practical solution that can help farmers to keep producing food without damaging the environment further?
Thanks, ADIKA, for the good question. The IPCC 2023 report explicitly states that climate change is already reducing food and water security. And it is vulnerable. Communities that are the hardest because they have fewer resources to recover from crop failure. To fix this, we need a real practical adaptation on the ground. So the government must fund and support small farmers by introducing climate resilient crops that can survive severe drought, building the efficient smart irrigation system to save water, and implementing early before the and warning the weather systems. If we don't train farmers in sustainable agriculture right now, food insecurity will only worsen in regions that already facing deep poverty and weak of infrastructure.
Excellent point on structural prevention. Now turning to ADIB, your evidence highlights the sudden devastating impact of man-made crisis. In your point of view, should SDG 2 prioritize immediate emergency food aid first, or should the focus be on long-term social safety nets like cash aid and school meals? So what do you think?
In my opinion, according to the Global Report on Food Crisis 2035, over 295 million people across 53 countries face acute severe hunger in 2024 alone. When conflict breaks out, farming stops, trade routes are physically blocked, and humanitarian access becomes incredibly dangerous. In those exact moments, long-term economic policies do not keep people alive. Immediate emergency food aid does. However, the report also emphasized that we need to development action. Once the immediate crisis settles, food aid must be connected to long-term social protections like cash assistance, school meals, and rebuilding local livelihood so that family don't fall back into severe hunger.
So it's a balance of immediate survival and system recovery. Adam, let's bring you in here. Your argument is that food exists, but people simply cannot buy it. How can government make nutritious food genuinely affordable for low-income families while still protecting the livelihoods of small farmers and local vendors?
Okay, so this is where the SOFI 2025 reports will give us a harsh reality check. It estimates that 2.6 billion people, about a third of the world population, could not afford a healthy diet in 2024. High food price inflation affects poor families with the most because a massive share of their income is spent strictly on food. In order to solve this issue without hurting the local sellers, the government shouldn't just force price cap. Instead, they need to introduce something new, like they should target the subsidies for nutritious food like fresh foods, vegetable, and also local proteins. Moreover, they should also invest in public food distribution systems. and fund-free healthy school meals, which directly guarantees a market for local farmer while feeding vulnerable children. That is all for my point.
Okay, thank you, Adam. So we have clearly established that climate, conflict, and prices are all deeply connected to each other. So let's take a look at potential tensions. If the governments have limited resources, which problem needs to be tackled first? Let's open the floor for direct interaction. Zarfan, how does your climate perspective respond to Adam's focus on affordability?
So I love your perspective on what Adam's tried to point out, but from the point of what Adam said, I had argued that affordability is actually a direct symptom of climate failure. Think about it. Why do food price suddenly skyrocket in market? It's because a massive heat wave or unexpected flood, especially, just wipe out half the local harvest, and it's create a severe shortage. So, Adam, if food constantly becomes inexpensive because crops are failing globally, doesn't affordability depends heavily on my point about a climate resilient farming? If we don't fix the production shocks and support the sustainable agriculture, no amount of financial aid or even subsidies from the government will ever be enough to keep food cheap for poor people and families.
Okay, I completely agree with you, Zarfan, that climate shocks drives up prices, and they definitely make things worse. But my counter argument is that even during perfect weather condition, when global food production is at an all-high time, millions of impoverished families still go hungry simply because of systematic poverty and low wages. Food existence does not guarantee food access. And plus, if a climate shock causes a price spike, a wealthy family can easily afford the inflation, whereas a poor family instantly fall into malnutrition. So we have to protect the consumer's wallet and income just as much as we protect the farmer's field.
Okay, so if I can jump in here, for me, both of your arguments assume that markets and society are functioning normally. But Zafan, let me ask you, can sustainable agriculture advance irrigation or farmer training even work in areas torn apart by war or active conflict? When people are displaced, they cannot safely farm. And Adam, food affordability becomes completely irrelevant if conflict physically blocks food deliveries from entering a region. In those severe humanitarian crises, emergency assistance is the only thing that works. Poverty and climate vulnerabilities become infinitely worse during a conflict because safety nets completely collapse. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Adib. I think this is a brilliant back and forth, and it also proved that these three issues cannot be solved in isolation. So let's shift our focus to integrated solutions. Adib, I think I've heard that you mentioned the emergency food aid can sometimes cause long-term dependency. Do you think food aid is enough on its own, or do you think should it be strictly tied to nutrition education and local food system rebuilding? So what's your point on this?
Okay, for me, it absolutely cannot stand alone. Pure food aid is just a temporary band aid for an emergency. The global report on food crisis shows that we need to connect emergency response with long-term development action. When we deliver aid, it should be paired with cash forward programs that will help locals to rebuild their own markets, transport networks, and farms. We also need to integrate nutrition education so that families know how to maximize their health with available resources rather than just relying on cheap processors, emergency food rations that don't provide proper long-term nutrition. That's my opinion.
Exactly, Adi. Because SDG 2 isn't just about making people feel full, it's about proper nutrition, like health, and having a stable food supply. To tie this back to your point about cash aid, do you think food affordability can truly be improved without also solving broader economic shocks like inflation and also weak social protection? The government must realize that the food security is directly tied to economic policy. So we need long-term policies like minimum wage adjustment paired with local agriculture support so that the poorest families have a resilient financial shield against global price spikes.
Uh, that's a good point, and that's what we all want to hear. Where sustainable agriculture ties the whole node together, if the governments invest a little bit more in localized, uh, especially a smart farming, we can reduce maybe the half of what we need, so we can dependently on highly volatile global food chains. So when local farmers can consistently, uh, what we can say, maybe in 1 year, consistent in 1 year, produce food, uh, despite of the harsh weather or local supply, uh, can stays uh, can stays and remain steady. So food price can sustain on affordable, like what Adam says, and the economic shocks that Adib mentioned are heavily minimized. The ultimate solution to achieving a zero hunger is empowering local food system to be entirely self-sufficient and mostly stable for a long term.
Okay, thank you, Zarfan. Thank you so much for all of our panelists. This has been an incredibly rich and also multi-dimensional discussion. I think to summarize our session today, our panel unanimously agrees on one fundamental truth, which is global hunger is not simply a food shortage issue, and we cannot achieve zero hunger by merely producing more food. While we acknowledge certain distinct priorities, where Zarfan emphasized long-term climate resilient farming earlier, and Adib also highlights the urgency of crisis response and social protection, and Adam also stated champion immediate consumer affordability and nutritious access. It is undeniably clear that these three elements must work together. And today's discussion prove that achieving SDG 2 zero hunger requires us to look at the whole different system, and we must build a food system that is fair, resilient, and also affordable, so that safe nutritious food consistently reach the people who need it the most. I think that's all from me, and thank you to all of our panelists, and also thank you for all of our audience. I think this concludes our panel discussion today. Have a great day ahead, and I hope we can meet again together in the future. That's all from me.
Thank you.
Thank you.